Germany started World War II with the introduction of Blitzkrieg. The new Lightning War required a fast and powerful ground attack supported by light and dive bombers. This combined arms doctrine was very effective and allowed Germany to move across Europe. However, the focus on close air support left the Luftwaffe short of long-range strategic bombers. Due to restrictions on military development after World War I, German bombers were engineered to disguise themselves as civilian aircraft. Therefore, they focused on lighter bombers with smaller payloads. On the other hand, the Allies developed a variety of bombers, including heavy bombers, such as the legendary American B-17 Flying Fortress and the British Avro Lancaster. Both aircraft carried more than double the payload of the German He-111. Adolf Hitler really wanted to see New York City burn. However, the German U-boats did not have enough firepower to cause damage, and the Luftwaffe had no aircraft that could do the job. I really lack a bomber capable of making a round-trip flight to New York with a 4.5-ton bomb load. I would love to have such a bomber, which would finally plug the mouths of arrogance across the seas, said the Luftwaffe, Commander-in-Chief Hermann Göring in 1938. The problem had always been the enormous distance a bomber had to cover to reach New York. By early 1941, Germany was in a very favorable position in the war. The British were the only real threat remaining in Western Europe, and wolf packs of U-boats hunted the supply convoys that sustained the island nation. In addition, Portugal allowed German ships to refuel in the Azores. These islands provided a more viable launching point for transatlantic bombers to reach America's east coast. Hitler himself declared the need to deploy long-range bombers against American cities in the Azores. Called the America Bomber, which is a very literal translation, the project was laid out in a 33-page Luftwaffe document in 1942. Major German aircraft designers Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Junkers, and Heinkel submitted concepts for the proposed bomber. The Me-264 Messerschmitt was the first concept built and flown. Delivered in May 1942, this ship carried the heaviest cargo, namely 6.5 tons. The Junkers Ju-390 was built, flown, and delivered just after the Messerschmitt, also in May 1942. This aircraft had a smaller payload capacity of 5 tons. Neither the Heinkel nor the Focke-Wulf concept made it into production or flown. The potential impact of a strategic bombing campaign on the United States would be twofold. First, attacks on industrial targets, especially those related to the aircraft industry, would seriously hamper America's ability to serve as a democratic arsenal. Fewer planes going overseas for use by the British and Soviets meant less resistance to German attacks. In addition, an attack on the American mainland would force the country to significantly improve its air defense system. This would draw down air defense resources that would otherwise be sent to allies overseas. Once again, this would make it easier for Germany to win the war in Europe. However, with Allied bombing targeting German industrial capabilities, American bomber development slowed significantly. In addition, Hitler developed a stronger interest in other wonder weapons, such as the V-2 rocket. Due to reduced material and funding, the American bomber project was abandoned before the end of the war. All of these deliveries were deemed too expensive or not feasible by 1944. Ironically, Hitler's pre-war vision of long-range strategic bombers and a burning New York City was killed by Allied bombers like the B-17 and Lancaster. During World War II, about 40 B-17s were captured and refurbished by the Germans after crash landing or being forced to crash, and about a dozen were put back into the air. Recalling the German Balkenkreuz national markings on the wings and sides of the fuselage, as well as the flash of the swastika tailfin, the captured B-17s were used to determine the B-17's vulnerability and to train German interceptor pilots in attack tactics. Others, with the cover designations Dornier Du 200 and Du 288, were used as long-range transport by the Special Tasks Unit Kampfgeschwader 200, carrying out agent drops and supplying covert airfields in the Middle East and North Africa. They were chosen specifically for this mission because they were better suited to this role than any other German aircraft available. Soviet-interned B-17s. The U.S. did not offer B-17s to the Soviet Union as part of its war supplies aid program, but at least 73 aircraft were purchased by the Soviet Air Force. These aircraft either landed with mechanical problems during shuttle bombing raids on Germany or were damaged in Luftwaffe raids on Poltava. The Soviets restored 23 of these aircraft to flying condition and concentrated them in the 890th Bomber Regiment of the 45th Bomber Aviation Division, 153, but they never saw combat. In 1946, or 1947, according to Holm, the regiment was assigned to the Kazan factory, moving from Baranovichi, to assist Soviet efforts to reproduce the more advanced Boeing B-29 as the Tupolev Tu-4. B-17S interned in Switzerland. During Allied bomber raids, U.S. and British bombers sometimes flew into Swiss airspace, due to damage or, on rare occasions, accidentally bombed Swiss cities. Swiss aircraft attempted to intercept and force each plane to land, detaining its crew. A Swiss pilot was killed, shot down by a U.S. bomber crew in September 1944. Official Swiss records identify 6,501 airspace violations during the war, with 198 foreign aircraft landing on Swiss territory and 56 aircraft crashing there. In October 1943, a Swiss-interned Boeing B-17 F-25VE, tail number 25841, and the crew of the U.S. flight after the Flying Fortress experienced engine problems following a raid on Germany and was forced to land. The aircraft was handed over to the Swiss Air Force, which then flew the bomber until the end of the war, using spare parts from other B-17s that were interned but not airworthy. The bomber's upper surfaces were repainted dark olive but retained the light gray underwings and lower fuselage surfaces. The aircraft carries the Swiss national White Cross emblem in a red square on both sides of the rudder, fuselage sides, and on the top and bottom of the wings. The B-17F also carries the light gray flash letters RD and I on either side of the Swiss national emblem on the fuselage. In 1942, Japanese technicians and mechanics rebuilt 3 damaged B-17S, 1D, and 2E series, using spare parts salvaged from abandoned B-17 wrecks in the Philippines and the East Java Indies. The 3 bombers, which still contained top-secret Norden bomb sites, were transported to Japan where they underwent extensive technical evaluation by GIKIN, the Imperial Japanese Air Force's Air Engineering Research Institute, Koku Gijutsu Kenkyujo, at Tachikawa Airfield. The D model, later considered an obsolete design, was used in Japanese training and propaganda films. The 2 Es were used to develop air combat tactics for use against the B-17. They were also used as enemy aircraft in pilot and crew training films. One of the 2 Es photographed at the end of the war by U.S. Air Reconnaissance. The plane was codenamed Tachikawa 105 inches based on the mysterious plane's wingspan, 104 feet, but was not properly identified as a captured B-17 until after the war. No trace of the 3 captured flying fortresses was ever found in Japan by the Allied occupying forces. The bombers were assumed to be lost in some way or scrapped at the end of the war to obtain their vital war materials.